According to Michigan's campaign to end homelessness, there are more than 86,000 homeless people in Michigan, enough people to populate a large city. Over 1/3 of the homeless are working poor, and nearly 60% are female heads of households. Welcome to Newsmakers Extended Edition. Joining me now is Veronika Scott, the founder and CEO of the Empowerment Plan, which is really an organization, I don't want to say to help end homelessness, but certainly to assist in the road to help end homelessness, correct?
Really what we do is try to help all the parents that you're talking about, those women that you know that have kids that are struggling to make that step from being in a shelter or being on the streets to being independent and being able to take care of themselves and their families. That's what we focus on. We help them get to that independent level, and that's what we're trying to do. The Empowerment Plan really exists to employ those that really want that opportunity and that job, and to give coats and shelter to those that need it on the streets.
How did, for folks who, and there are many, who don't know what the Empowerment Plan is, how did it get started, and how did it morph into what it is today?
And the Empowerment Plan was just a class project for me back in college. I started when I was about 21, 22 years old. And it was something that I had spent a lot of time on the streets doing research for a class project. And it turned out, the thing that really shocked me the most was that I spent a lot of time with this one shelter. And across the street from the shelter, there was a playground. And 2 people were living inside of this playground. And I took a picture on my phone, came back a week later, and it had been burned to the ground in a turf war. And the people survived that instance only to pass away a few years later. And for me, it's like, why would you build something for yourself when somebody else is giving it to you for free? 20 feet away, there's a shelter. And so that's really what inspired this coat that turns into the sleeping bag that offered kind of mobility and a little bit of pride, because at the core of everything, everybody wants to be able to take care of themselves.
This is something that you designed, this coat/sleeping bag to help folks living on the streets.
Exactly. And everybody wants to take care of themselves and be independent. And how do we help them do that? How do we give that opportunity instead of just giving people stuff? So the first thing I designed was me trying to make it into that class project was the coat. This is a jacket by day, sleeping bag by night, and you can wear it as over-the-shoulder bag when not in use. And the first one was horrible, and then, did a couple of them, and actually had a great street name in that area as the coat lady or the crazy coat lady, because I would be there 3 nights a week for months. So it was a wonderful, transition into what it is now. It's more about the hiring of the population that could have been on the receiving end of the coat in the first place.
Well, tell me how you got from there to where you are today. So you were giving out coats and helping to keep those folks that were living on the street warm, and then what made you take it to the next level?
It was still a class project when I started, and did the first couple prototypes and only made like 3 that entire year, and was getting so many requests on the street for the jackets. They're like, so when can we get one? When am I going to get my coat? And I was like, this is never going to happen. I don't know how it can. And that kind of just the sheer number of people that requested it, that didn't know me at all, coming up to me asking for one, pushed me to say, okay, what if I try to build a business plan? I'm an art student, art and design.
A business plan where nobody actually purchases your product, exactly. Where you have to give it away for free.
Exactly. Like, what would it take? How would I do this? How would I even make these? Initially, that wasn't the plan. I had no idea what it was going to be. And built the first couple business plans, got amazing support from entities like Carhartt was our first supporter and is to this day. And started from there in a closet in a shelter, making 25 coats the entire season, to where we are now. We have 25 people total, and we're making about 5,000 coats this year to give out, majority in Detroit, but the rest across the U.S.
But you went from providing coats to providing jobs. What made you decide coats weren't enough?
There was one instance, when I was really early on in the project, where I was, bringing prototype number 7 back to the shelter, and I was leaving, and I had been getting a lot of positive feedback at that point, just from the people living on the streets, and people were really excited about it. But there was this one woman, as I was leaving, ended up screaming at me, full on yelling, and I was turned around, had no idea why somebody was that mad at me, and walked up to her and was like, introduced myself, and I was like, what's wrong? What's going on? She's like, well, we don't need coats. What you're doing is pointless. This is all crap. We need jobs. And she was completely right. At the end of the day, the coat is just a Band-Aid for a deeper systemic issue. And that's what I was trying to attack with just this coat. And so it became more about, like, all right, you know, I can do that. It became way more about hiring people, and we can do anything now. If it was, we could do Tyvek Speedos and still have the same effect in the community and with the people that we hire, because it's more about them than it is about the product. It just happens that the product we make has also a really good effect.
So now you were able to create a factory, if that's what you would call it,
Yeah.
where you hire folks who have previously been on the streets, unemployed, and give them full-time employment, correct?
Yes, we get people from all different walks of life. You know, it's amazing. You know, a couple people will come in and they cannot believe what some of the, you know, the women and the parents that we hire, they cannot believe what they've gone through. They also, I would never in a million years imagine that this person was on the streets. You know, we've got people that have, you know, a degree, a master's degree in psychology and social work, and you have others that were working for H&R Block before this happened, and you would never imagine that something like that could happen to them, or somebody that seems so stable. Like, what happened? And that scares people. It's like they realize in that moment that we're never that far away from being in that situation too. And that's the most, like, shocking, surprising, also enjoyable thing to have happen, is this can happen to anybody at any time. You never know. But we need to help those that this has happened to and help work with them so that they can get on their 2 feet.
The women, I would imagine mostly women, if not all,
Mostly
that you
women, yeah.
employ, I would imagine once they are employed full-time, making some money, everything else just sort of falls in line.
It takes a while for things to fall in line. You know, the first year is the toughest. People come from all different walks of life. Sometimes this is their first real job they've ever had. And others had work experience before this, and they were only on the streets or in the shelter for a month. So people come from very different situations. Some are struggling with addiction, and there's a big road ahead of them. It's going to be a long trip, and it's not going to be easy. You know, they're fighting for custody of their kids. There's a lot going on.
Is there more to the experience than employment? Do you provide, I mean, other than camaraderie and a common experience, other types of help?
We do a lot. The first thing that we do is a microloan. So when people come in, no one knows how to sew when we hire them. But by the end of the first month or the first 3 months, they can make a full coat. And from there, usually within that same amount of time, we offer them a microloan of up to about $1,500. And that's to get them into that house or that car, whatever is needed to make that next step. Sometimes people have used it for college, to go back to school, whatever it is, it's up to them. They can use that to help themselves get out of whatever situation that they're in. And every single person we've ever hired has been able to move out of the shelter within the first 3 to 6 months. And that's just all of their hard work. And what we're doing is just trying to offer them whatever it takes, that support network, to help them make that happen.
What's the, not to put you on the spot with statistics, but the average length of time that an employee might stay with you?
Right now, we're only about 2.5 years old. So we've gone from employing 3 people 2.5 years ago to 25. So there's been a huge growth curve. And at this point, everybody that we've hired on has really stayed. We've had 1 person leave a year. Really because we're trying to build out the organization, prove that it can work. You can hire from shelters, and you can do this. You can hire parents, and they're going to be so driven and so ambitious, and they're going to show up every day and want to make it work, want to make your business more successful. So that's what we've been proving out. And now we're getting to that point where we're going to hire more people than we need so we can help them move on.
Well, and I have to figure out how you're funded, and we'll talk about all of that and a little bit more information as well in just a minute. Thank you so much. Stick around. Stay around as well, please. We will have more with Veronika Scott in just a couple of minutes. Don't go away.
Great shops, great eats, and great places. It's My Destinations, only on Xfinity On Demand. From Detroit to Grand Rapids, now you can check out some of Michigan's greatest destinations. Delicious pizza, Michigan craft beer, great family museums, and so much more. It's easy. Push the On Demand button on your remote, navigate to Get Local, and select My Destinations. It's My Destinations, only on Xfinity On Demand. Another way Comcast stays focused on the community.
They're aiming to help build a better life for those that have become trapped in the cycle of homelessness. Welcome back. I'm here with Veronika Scott, the founder and CEO of the Empowerment Plan. Thinking about how you're funded, you have a very unusual business model. You have to pay your employees, and yet you give away your product for free. How does that work? How are you funded, and how are you able to keep your company afloat?
So I kind of went about this backwards. Normally, this would exist as like a for-profit model, and then you'd start a nonprofit to talk about the social mission. But, you know, I went the other way around, and really we are funded entirely by donations right now, and a lot of people sponsor coats. Giant corporate entities to just an interest in an individual can sponsor a coat for $100 and give to somebody in need across the U.S. this winter. But the next thing that we're trying to get to is that we've gotten a lot of demand to purchase our product. People want to buy it, and we're very lucky to have a product to sell, and that quality is astounding now. So how do we get to that point of being sustainable and being able to take care of ourselves and not need donations to run? So over the next few years, that's going to be one of our main focuses, is to be able to sell those coats retail so we can fund what we're doing with hiring, but also with the coats that we hand out on the streets.
So you'd like to see some big box retailers out there come to you and say, you know, we'd like to sell these to our skiers, our hikers, folks, non-homeless folks?
Yes, and we're mostly looking to just begin e-commerce site because we get thousands of requests like a year to just purchase them online. We'll start there, and then we'll grow from that point. We'll keep it small initially.
And of course, then you're just going to have to keep hiring more and more people because you have to continue to give them away to the people who need them first before you can to profit from them, correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
And it has been helpful. Recently, you've gotten a lot of national media attention. Oprah Magazine was the latest. Who has sort of been following your story and helped to gain your organization some attention?
You know, one of the amazing stories recently, Madonna came to visit the Empowerment Plan and actually donated and is one of our supporters, and that was a huge thing because everybody on the team just loves her, so we all freaked out over there, and she's wearing her coat and wearing some of the safety goggles that we bedazzle for that specifically, and that was wonderful, and that just went all over. You know, there's a video by The Gap that just kind of has spread like wildfire as well, and it's amazing that companies like the Gap or Amex or Carhartt or Quicken and, you know, people like Madonna pay attention to such a, you know, we're a small organization in the city of Detroit, and that they want to take it and see it grow and possibly see it grow even to other cities across the U.S. because this is not just a problem that Detroit is experiencing, it's a problem that we as a nation and a world have been experiencing for a while. And how do we help those that really want to get out of their situation?
Why are you so passionate about wanting to help the homeless population in Detroit? I mean, you could volunteer and do an awful lot of good. You're not getting rich off of doing this.
No, for sure. You know, this all started, you know, like I said, as a class project. I didn't really fully recognize, though, why I kept on doing it, even when school ended, while I graduated and decided that this would become my full-time job, and I would turn away other job opportunities to make sure I could do this. It took me a long time to recognize that what I was doing was, with the Empowerment Plan, was creating this opportunity I had wished had been given to my parents growing up. You know, I grew up in a situation where we were constantly strapped for money, and watching how that can decay a family and the anger and stress that causes, and what it's like to constantly be worried, can we pay rent? Are we going to be able to afford food? Or what's going to happen next? And growing up in that and realizing that and wanting to make a difference because I made it through it, and I want to help those parents that are going through it so that their kids can be free from all of that, can grow up in a situation where there's time for homework and time for that attention, and you're not worried about money and where the next meal is coming from. So that was, and it took me a long time to recognize it, but the same opportunity I wish had been given to my family growing up.
Where do you see the Empowerment Plan in the next 5 to 10 years?
You know, it's really exciting to imagine what the Empowerment Plan could become. You know, it's changed a lot in a small amount of time. But really, we see ourselves growing, obviously, in Detroit and becoming larger and being able to do this retail, this whole retail brand. And that will only strengthen what we can give back and the social things that we can accomplish. But the next step is, like, we've got requests from cities all the time across the U.S., you know, San Francisco, Oakland, those areas want to bring the empowerment plan into their community. And so our next, within the next 5 to 10 years, we could have another community or another city on the docket as part of an extension of the empowerment plan, and that would be a wonderful thing to accomplish.
And as you go about your fundraising, obviously you have a website, and we'll make sure to get that out at the end of our show today. People can give, you mentioned for $100, they can sponsor a coat. They can certainly write a check for any amount they want. They can ask how they can be helpful to volunteer, but perhaps the big donors and big donations, do you have business folks collaborating from the community that are, that you really rely on to keep you going, month after month? We have
quite a few different community members. There's a few people in Detroit, the whole Quicken family of companies. We're part of their family, and it's wonderful. And then Carhartt has been a great supporter since day one, and they're like family to us. But there's also some larger supporters that aren't even based in Michigan, that continue to give every year and continue to support what we're doing to help us grow and to help us scale. So that's a wonderful thing.
And then the stories that you get back and the relationships that you build with your employees, there's got to be some tremendous success stories there.
Oh, they all have it. Everybody has an amazing success story, and sometimes, we have a couple people that have been with us only for a few months, while others have been with us the whole, 2 years, almost 3 years, and each of them have their success stories, and it's funny to think about, because I remember the first day I met him in the shelter, going in for interviews and having people, a couple people like come up to me and say, "You're going to remember me. I'm going to get this job," and you can tell that a few were just in survival mode. They're worried about where they're going to be in the next 24 hours, but they're so persistent on making a change. And then seeing them 6 months down the line or a year later, and the person that they are really shines through, and that's like the best part of my job, to see that, because they're all success stories, and sometimes they lose sight of that. And I'm like, "Do you remember what you were, it was 6 months ago. It was a year ago, it was a month ago, where you were and where you are now?" And they're like, "Oh my God." And that's the best part of what I get to do. Everybody has made amazing strides. One of our ladies got proposed to on the sewing floor. And we were all at the wedding, and then they had their baby, and she has her house, and she's an amazing member of our team. So it's stories like that keep us moving.
It's got to be tough, but I would imagine the ultimate goal is that they can eventually move on and get another better job someday.
Exactly. So a lot of the team that we have now, we see growing with the company and growing as we talk about building this retail product. They're the ones I see helping me make that happen and really growing with the whole organization. There are going to be others that say, "I want to, open up my own company. I want to do anything I can. I want to go back into tax work. I want to go back into, I want to design. Now that I've learned all this, I want to take it and do something else." So there's a few people that are like that, and we're really excited about supporting them on their journey out.
All right, wonderful, wonderful story. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Coming up next, we will hear the personal story of Teia Sams, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
You've seen Comcast Newsmakers on CNN Headline News. Now you can watch them on Xfinity On Demand. It's easy. Push the On Demand button on your remote. Navigate to Get Local and select Comcast Newsmakers. Now you can watch in-depth interviews with politicians, public officials, and community leaders at your convenience. It's Comcast Newsmakers on Xfinity On Demand. Another way Comcast stays focused on the community.
1 in every 42 people in the city of Detroit are homeless. Joining me now is Teia Sams, who was a part of that statistic until she started working at the Empowerment Plan. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you as well, Teia, for joining us here today too.
Thank you for having me.
And so what brought you in contact eventually with the Empowerment Plan? You were, and correct me if I'm wrong, in a homeless shelter at one point in the city of Detroit?
Yes. So in life, we don't get to plan exactly how our future turns out. And unfortunately, mine took a turn for the worse. So I was forced to send my children to move with their father, and I was forced to make the decision whether I want to be on the streets or I wanted to go to a shelter. And that's where I met Miss Veronika Scott. There she offered me employment, and I've been with the empowerment plan for 2 years now.
What was your reaction when, or was it you that came to her, or was it her who sought you out and saw some potential there? What was your reaction when she said, hey, I'd like to bring you on board and make you a part of the company?
When she came with the opportunity not only for myself, but for a lot of the women there in the shelter. However, I made myself known to her. I kind of told her that she was going to hire me and not to forget my face. So I would say maybe a week later, they called me back and they gave me the position. And I've been in a few interviews in my lifetime, but that was the greatest feeling that I've ever had. It was like a sense of relief for me.
When she actually hired you and gave you the job?
Yes.
And then in the early weeks when you were obviously being trained, I'm guessing that your history and you were not a seamstress prior to working for the empowerment plan, but she was able to, and her folks were able to teach you how to sew, how to become a seamstress, how to do what you needed to do?
Yes, so I've always been creative and unique in my own way, but I had never sewn two pieces of any type of fabric together. And just walking in there and seeing the sewing machines and looking at what these ladies had done, I've never seen myself being able to make a coat. And they made it so easy for me. It was like, I don't know, it was just really easy. It made it really easy for me.
Step one, obviously, learning the job, getting comfortable with your coworkers, what your job responsibilities are. Once you kind of had that down and you knew what you were doing, you were showing up for work and doing your job every day, at what point did being a part of being employed there start to make a difference in your life?
The part of knowing that I have this job is not just something temporary, but it's promised as something to help me get on my feet. I knew that it wasn't going anywhere, so the part of me waking up every day just knowing that I had something permanent, it encouraged me a lot to keep going.
And then how did that allow you to, were you able to save some money to purchase a car, or I guess you didn't need any fancy work clothes for interviews because you already had the job, but other things obviously that you would need to become healthier and happier and more stable?
As I mentioned before, before making the decision to go into the shelter, I sent my children away to stay with their father, and I was able to get my children back, and not only get them back, but to provide a nice, safe home for them as well, and also to be able to furnish my place and just provide them with the things that they needed. I've also been able to purchase a car. The microloan that she talked about was very, very helpful for me. It was, I'll say, a stepping stone to help me purchase my car, which allows me to keep my job. And I can say that everything that I have gotten has made my future better, not only for me, but for my children.
Where do you see yourself in 2 to 3 years? Are you going to stick with the job you have? Do you have aspirations of moving on? What are your plans for the future?
Well, we can't see the future, so I do not know, but if I could plan it, I would be here with Ms. Scott growing in the empowerment plan, because I don't see this business just sitting here as a standstill. I see her growing and making a difference in everybody's lives.
And where do you think, and again, you don't have a crystal ball, you made that clear, where do you think you might be if there was no Veronika Scott that walked into the shelter that day?
I believe that I would be somewhere being successful, because it's not our situations that determine who we are. Though I had a setback in life and I was forced to go to the shelter, I've always been determined. I've always had the motivation, and I'm a spiritual person, so I know that God would have had something better for me.
Great answer. Second chances. Everybody deserves one. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us as well. If you would like to make a donation to this organization or get involved in any way, you can head to their website, which is theempowermentplan.org. Thank you so much for watching today. Have a great day.